Brahma is the engineer who takes the raw materials, earth, water, fire, air, ether, and so forth, and begins to form the different species of life, the aquatics, the reptiles, the birds, the fish, the reptiles, birds, and then there's the living entities, mammals, and then the demigods and so forth. And so when his sons were born, very early on, he wanted them to get married and begin to populate the universe. But the Kumaras refused. They said, we don't want to grow up. We want to remain young boys. And we're perfectly happy not being married. We'd rather do austerities. And of course, Brahma became a little upset. He's in a mode of passion. And there was a red spot on his forehead. And out came Rudra in a very angry mood, and he started destroying things. And Brahma had to calm him down. And he told Lord Shiva, he said, look, you can be angry like this if you want at the end of creation, but not in the beginning. We haven't even started yet, and you're going to destroy everything. So you have to always meditate and remain in a mode of goodness, even though you're in charge in a mode of ignorance. And when the right time comes, then you can do the dance of pralaya and destroy everything. So that was because Brahma became upset with his sons who refused to grow up, basically. So they always remained young boys. And they became Brahman realized after a long period of disciplinary, severe type of disciplinary action as celibate students. But they one day were asked, wanted to visit Lord Vishnu in the spiritual world, and when they approached the gates of Vaikuntha, they were obstructed by Jaya and Vijaya. And they were still at that time impersonalists. Now, I'm not calling them Mayavadis, because the difference between an impersonalist and a Mayavadi is the impersonalist doesn't say that Brahman is the ultimate destination. They say simply, we don't know, but we're open to learning if it's possible. The Mayavadis categorically say there's nothing beyond Brahman. And by saying that, they embark on insulting Krishna and all his plenary expansions, such as Narayana, Vishnu, and so forth. So that's the major difference between an impersonalist, let's call him a bona fide impersonalist, and a Mayavadi. The Mayavadis believe in Kevala Advaita, absolute oneness. There's nothing beyond that. And anything that's manifest in this material world is actually has a material body and is subject to influence of the modes of material nature, time, and so forth. So that includes Krishna. So therefore they are the worst aparadis or insulters of Lord Krishna. Worse than the demons. Yeah. So the Kumaras were, let's call them bona fide impersonalists. They just didn't know, but they were not opposed to finding out. Yeah. So when they were stopped at the doors of Vaikuntha, basically because Jaya and Vijay did not think they were qualified to enter into the spiritual world yet, they became upset, and they cursed Jaya and Vijay to take birth in the material world, which is like the worst thing in the world for someone who's at the door of Vaikuntha, who are personal servants of Lord Krishna or Narayana. And at that time, Lord Vishnu appeared, and he apologized to the Kumaras. He said, these are my servants, and they've inappropriately obstructed you from entering, and I want to apologize. At that point, the Kumaras realized they had made a mistake. Why is the Lord of the universe apologizing? And on top of all that, they were attracted by him. And they bowed down, and they were able to get the scent of the tulsi leaves on the feet of the Lord. And when that happened, they became spiritually, let's say, enlightened. And they suddenly realized that this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But Lord Vishnu accepted the curse on his two servants, Jaya and Vijay, and he gave them a choice. He said, you can spend 3 lifetimes as my opponents or demons, or you can have 7 lifetimes as devotees and come back to Vaikuntha. And so Jaya and Vijay talked to each other and said, we'll become demons because that way we can come back sooner. So it's a very transcendental story. And of course they became Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, and then Ravana and Kumbhakarna, and then Sisupala and Dantavakra. And as a bonus for being really good opponents of Krishna and giving Krishna a chance to fight, they took birth as Jagai and Madai in Chaitanya pastime. Then they went back to Godhead. Okay, so before executing the severe type of disciplinary actions, all of them became qualified brahmanas. This example suggests that one must first acquire the qualifications of a brahmana, not simply by birth, but also by quality. And then one can undergo the process of Brahman realization. So there is a process of going step by step, becoming a brahmana, becoming Brahman realized, then becoming Paramatma realized, and then eventually understanding Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But why go through all that trouble? It's highly troublesome, takes a long time, and one can go directly to Krishna by following Krishna's ultimate instruction, which is, just surrender unto me, I'll free you from all sinful reactions, and thus you'll come back to me, by always remembering me, serving me, thinking of me, and so forth. So this is, and also in the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it explains that the process of impersonal realization is very, very difficult. And not everyone can attain perfection. Very few people can attain perfection. So it says, Kleso dikaritas te sam avyakta shakta chetasam avyakta hi gatir dukam deva vavir avapyate. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. This is 12th chapter, verse number 5. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. So now Prabhupada says, so for a devotee there's no difficulty in approaching the Supreme immediately and directly. But for those who are following the impersonal way to spiritual realization, the path is difficult. They have to understand the unmanifested representation of the Supreme through such Vedic literatures as the Upanishads. Now, you try and understand the unmanifested representation of the Supreme, right? It's virtually impossible. And you have to study the Upanishads. They have to learn the language. You have to learn Sanskrit. Understand the non-perceptual feelings. Non-perceptual feelings. That's like an oxymoron, right? Non-perceptual feelings. And realize all these processes. This is not very easy for a common man. A person in Krishna consciousness engaged in devotional service simply by the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master, simply by offering regulative obeisances unto the deity, simply by hearing the glories of the Lord, and simply by eating the remnants of foodstuffs offered to the Lord, realizes the Supreme Personality of Godhead very easily. There is no doubt that the impersonalists are unnecessarily taking a troublesome path with the risk of not realizing the absolute truth at the ultimate end. But the personalist, without any risk, trouble, or difficulty, approaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly. A similar passage appears in the Srimad Bhagavatam. It is stated there that if one ultimately has to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this surrendering process is called bhakti, but instead takes the trouble to understand what is Brahman and what is not Brahman, and spends his whole life in that way, the result is simply troublesome. Therefore, it is advised here that one should not take up this troublesome path of self-realization, because there is uncertainty in the ultimate result. So, we should take Prabhupada's advice, Lord Chaitanya's advice, and not waste our time with a troublesome, very arduous, very technical process, but rather surpass all that and quickly go to the stage of becoming a devotee, which is the goal of the Vedas. Vedaischa sarva aham eva vedya. It's to know Krishna. If you know Krishna, you know everything. And because he's the origin of everything. So, therefore, the example of the Brahmanas is good, though, because they gave an example of how one can become an impersonalist first through severe austerity and discipline, and if you have a proper guru, you can go to the next stage of being Paramatma realized, and then to the next stage of being Bhagavan realized. It is possible, but it's very difficult, and it's not recommended by Krishna himself. 12th chapter, 5th verse. So now we'll go to the next verse, 137. The supreme enjoyer of all sacrifices accepted the incarnation of a boar, the second incarnation, and for the welfare of the earth, he lifted the earth from the nether regions of the universe. So, Prabhupada explains, the indication is that for each and every incarnation of the Personality of Godhead, the particular function executed is also mentioned. There cannot be any incarnation without a particular function, and such functions are always extraordinary. They are impossible for any living being to perform. So this is important. If someone claims that I am God, I am the present incarnation or avatar of Krishna or Vishnu or whatever, well, you can ask him, first of all, are you mentioned in the Vedas, in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam? Even if he says yes, you can say, well, there it's mentioned your birthplace, the name of your mother and father, and what your function is. What is your function? So he'll say something, right? And it'll be wrong. So there are 24 incarnations of the Lord mentioned, and they're regular at regular dates with the names of their mother and father and their function, which is extremely important. So it says, and it says that such functions are always extraordinary. They are impossible for any living being to perform. Right. So then Prabhupada says the incarnation of the boar is a wild pig, but this was not an ordinary pig. It was a gigantic boar with long, big tusks, and gigantic, like really, really big, bigger than the earth. Right. The incarnation of boar was to take the earth out of Pluto's region of filthy matter. Picking up something from a filthy place is done by a boar. And the all-powerful Personality of Godhead displayed this wonder to the Asuras, who had hidden the earth in such a filthy place. There is nothing impossible for the Personality of Godhead, and although he played the part of a boar, by the devotees he is worshipped, staying always in transcendence. So Krishna appears in his very special incarnation, and Krishna appears in every species of life, but this is a special appearance in this gigantic boar, and he goes down to a filthy place where the planet Pluto is located. And he picks the Earth up from the water, the filthy waters, and puts the Earth back into its orbit. Now, why did the Earth fall down? Well, because of sinful activities, such as boring into the Earth, into the core of the Earth. It's like Ravana made a tunnel from Lanka to Brazil. He bored right through the center of the Earth, to the core of the Earth. And today they're boring into the core of the Earth to extract oil. And when they take the oil out, they replace it with water. And water is heavier than oil. So they're throwing off the balance of the Earth on its axis. That's why it's possible the Earth could fall out of space again. It is possible. It could have happened once before. And for the same reason of boring into the core of the Earth and changing the balance of the Earth on its axis. So, even though he appeared as a boar, boars are dangerous animals. They can kill you, but those are small ones. This is a gigantic boar, bigger than the Earth, so he's able to pick up the entire Earth on his husks. But the devotees were not afraid. They recognized the Supreme Personality of Godhead in this very special incarnation, and they worshipped him. And we're still worshiping him today. So now, text number 8. So we did 6 and 7. We go to number 8. In the millennium of the Rishis, the Personality of Godhead accepted the third empowered incarnation in the form of Devarsi Narada, who was a great sage among the demigods. He collected expositions or explanations of the Vedas which deal with devotional service and which inspire non-fruitive action. Well, they're talking about the Narada Pancharatra, which is, there are 2 books that explain pure devotional service. One is the Narada Pancharatra, and the other is Srimad Bhagavatam. And with Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. Those are 2 books that explain pure devotional service, or Suddha Bhakti. There are many other Vedic literatures that don't exactly explain pure devotional service, but they explain how to advance somewhat toward devotional service, and they explain how to worship different demigods for getting material benefits and things like that. But pure devotional service is only explained in the Narada Pancharatra, Bhagavad Gita, and Srimad Bhagavatam. The great Rishi Narada, who is an empowered incarnation of the Personality of Godhead, propagates devotional service all over the universe. All great devotees of the Lord, all over the universe, and in different planets and species of life, are his disciples. Yeah, Narada Muni has made so many disciples. And he's still making disciples. He's still convincing people to give up material life, become devotees. Srila Vyasadeva, the compiler of the Srimad Bhagavatam, is also one of his disciples. Narada is the author of the Narada Pancharatra, which is the exposition of the Vedas, particularly for the devotional service of the Lord. This Narada Pancharatra trains the karmis, or the fruitive workers, to achieve liberation from the bondage of fruitive work. The conditioned souls are mostly attracted by fruitive work because they want to enjoy life by the sweat of their brows. This is a saying. The sweat of the brow. The brow means the forehead. When you work really hard, sometimes you sweat. You know, little droplets of sweat start coming down from your scalp onto your brow. You know. The reaction. Okay, by the law of nature provides that every action has its resultant. They want to enjoy life by the sweat of their brow, their own brows. The whole universe is full of fruitive workers in all species of life. The fruitive works include all kinds of economic development plans. Yes, so I want to market this product, or I want to make this app, or I want to make this algorithm, and then I'll have some success, and then Microsoft will come and buy it from me, and I'll become, make hundreds of millions of dollars. I can retire. and just eat, sleep, mate, and defend for the rest of my life. But the law of nature provides that every action has its resultant reaction, and the performer of the work is bound up by such reactions, good or bad. The reaction of good work is comparative material prosperity, whereas the reaction of bad work is comparative material distress. Anyway, there's the law of nature that says the more one is attracted to sense gratification and engages in it, the more they become bound up by the laws of nature. So let's take a look at that verse. The third chapter, verse number 18, I think. Let's see. Or 22. The more one is addicted to material pleasures, the more he or she is entrapped by material miseries. This is the law of nature, like the law of gravity. So, because every action has its resultant reaction, and the performer of the work is bound up by such reactions, good or bad. That's the whole point. Good or bad reactions are both binding us to the cycle of birth and death. It's not that good reactions means we're on a fast track to go back to Godhead. No. As long as we want to enjoy the result, we stay in the material world, even if the result is good. So you have higher planets in the material world, and you have middle planets in the material world, and you have lower planets in the material world. And in every one of those planets, one remains bound up by fruitive or self-interested activities that give reactions, good or bad, and they're both binding. Foolish materialists have no information of how to obtain eternal happiness in the unconditional state. Shri Narada informs these foolish fruitive workers how to realize the reality of happiness. In other words, it's called uninterrupted happiness. He gives direction to the diseased men of the world how one's present engagement can lead one to the path of spiritual emancipation. So, you see how the fruitive workers, whether they're doing good works or bad works, are being described. They're described as diseased because they want to enjoy the result themselves. They're not interested in offering the result to Krishna. Or they'll say, okay, well, I'll give Krishna 10%, I'll keep 90. Or I'll give him 30%, I'll keep 70. Or I'll give him 50%, I'll keep 50. Well, until it's 100%, one remains bound up. Jai Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhava Ki Jai. So people ask a question, well, how can I live if I give 100%? Well, Prabhupada gave 100%. Does it look like he suffered because of it? No. He was extremely successful, but he gave 100%. Ramanujacharya gave 100%. So many great devotees, the Alvars, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they all gave 100%. And they were all extremely successful, but they offered the result of all that success to Krishna so that it would be shared with everyone. So we shouldn't be afraid of giving 100% to Krishna. We should be afraid of not doing it, because then we remain bound up in a continual cycle of birth and death. So Narada informs these foolish fruitive workers how to realize the reality of happiness. He gives direction to the diseased men of the world how one's present engagement can lead one to the path of spiritual emancipation. In other words, it basically is saying you don't have to change what you're doing. You just have to adjust your consciousness to doing everything in a bona fide way for Krishna, not in a whimsical way. Whimsical means, today I'll go to Mangalarti. And then tomorrow I say, today I'm not going to go, I don't feel like it. Well, that's whimsical. Right. On the day you say, I'm not going to go to Mangalarti, do you fast the whole day? No, you still eat, you still do all the other things except go to Mangalarti. So that means you've become whimsical. Our duty, it's more important than eating and sleeping. It is to come and have darshan of the deity and chant our rounds and follow the regulative principles. That's our real duty. The other duties are not real. They don't lead to emancipation. They lead to more entanglement. That doesn't mean you shouldn't perform them, but we should have a prioritization of duty. We should prioritize spiritual duties over material duties, whereas materialistic people, they prioritize material duties even to the point of not engaging in any spiritual duties, or just engaging in a modicum, a few percentage points of spiritual duties. The physician, so Prabhupada says, Narada gives direction to the diseased men of the world. So this mentality of self-indulgence, of sense gratification, of working so hard just to maintain unnecessary sense gratification is a diseased state. It's not the normal state of a human being. It's a very sick, advanced stage of this disease of material attachment. The physician directs the patient to take treated milk in the form of curd for his sufferings from indigestion due to his taking another milk preparation. So if you drink too much milk, sometimes you get an upset stomach. And the cure for it is to have yogurt, which is another milk product. So one thing used in excess can be healed by something similar, but used therapeutically. So the cause of the disease and the remedy of the disease may be the same, but it must be treated by an expert physician like Narada. So there is such a thing as the art of work. We're not saying don't work. There is the art of work by which one is not entangled and one offers the result to Krishna. So this is explained also in the 5th chapter, where it says, Yukta karma phalam tyakva. Oh, there's another verse. It says, Yoga yukto visuddhatma, vichitatma jitendriya, sarvabhutatma bhutatma kurvan apina lipyate. One who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls the mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled. So this is the 5th chapter, 7th verse. Very important verse. And Prabhupada explains, one who is on the path to liberation by Krishna consciousness is very dear to every living being, and every living being is dear to him. This is due to his Krishna consciousness. Such a person cannot think of any living being as separate from Krishna, just as the leaves and branches of a tree are not separate from the tree. He knows very well that by pouring water on the root of the tree, the water will be distributed to all the leaves and branches, or by supplying food to the stomach, the energy is automatically distributed throughout the body. Because one who works in Krishna consciousness is servant to all, he is very dear to everyone. And because everyone is satisfied by his work, he is pure in consciousness. That is a very important point. And because everyone is satisfied by his work, he is pure in consciousness. So to have a clear mind and not have any sense of guilt for having been inappropriate with words or actions, and the fact that everyone is pleased, just like the Goswamis. Everyone was pleased with them. Even the ruffians and the dacoits, they also respected them because they saw that they had not one selfish bone in their body. They were givers, 100% givers, not takers. And they lived very strictly, sleeping under a different tree every night. They didn't have a fixed residence in Vrindavan. And they hardly slept. They only slept hardly a half an hour. The rest of the time, they were in deep discussion and contemplation and service for Krishna. And they were always administering to the villagers, poor people. They were not poor. They had everything they needed, but they were considered poor because they didn't live in big houses and they didn't have big opulent food and things like that. They were very simple, plain people living in Vrindavan, and the Goswamis would administer them. They would help heal the sick. They would give spiritual instruction, and they were always there to answer questions and resolve disputes. They would go to the Goswamis whenever there was a dispute, and they would, because of their great respect for them, they would follow their advice. And therefore, they were genuine givers of Krishna consciousness for the people. Because one who works in Krishna consciousness is servant to all, he is very dear to everyone. And because everyone is satisfied by his work, he is pure in consciousness. Because he is pure in consciousness, his mind is completely controlled. And because his mind is controlled, his senses are also controlled. Because his mind is always fixed on Krishna, there's no chance of his being deviated from Krishna. Nor is there a chance that he will engage his senses in matters other than the service of the Lord. He does not like to hear anything except topics relating to Krishna. He or she does not like to eat anything which is not offered to Krishna, and he does not wish to go anywhere if Krishna is not involved. Therefore, his senses are controlled. A man of controlled senses cannot be offensive to anyone. One may ask, why then was Arjuna offensive in battle to others? Wasn't he in Krishna consciousness? Arjuna was only superficially offensive because, as has already been explained in the second chapter, all the assembled persons on the battlefield would continue to live individually as the soul cannot be slain. So spiritually no one was killed on the battle of Kurukshetra. Only their dresses were changed by the order of Krishna, who was personally present. Therefore Arjuna, while fighting in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, was not really fighting at all. He was simply carrying out the orders of Krishna in full Krishna consciousness. Such a person is never entangled in the reactions of work. So, what does that mean? That there are no spoils of the war. Spoils of the war means things that you get because you kill people. You get their house, you get their wife, you get their kids, you get their animals, you get their wealth, right? Those are called spoils of war. You spoiled another person to get those things, right? But there was no spoils of the war for Arjuna. He did not inherit a kingdom. He did get the kingdom to which he had the right to have. His father was the king, but his father died young, and the sons were all young, so they were under the guardianship of Dhritarashtra, who was supposed to pass the reins of the kingdom to the Pandavas when they reached maturity. But because he was attached to his sons, especially Duryodhana, he didn't do it out of his spiritual weakness. And this eventually precipitated the Kurukshetra battle, which was ordained by Krishna. It's not that the Pandavas were seeking to fight. They were not. They were going to tolerate their injustice. But Krishna ordered the fight after trying every means possible to settle the issue without fighting. But because Duryodhana was incalcitrant, was intransigent, he refused to negotiate. He refused to give even a pinhole of land to the Pandavas. Pandavas would have been satisfied with one village each. He wouldn't give that. So there was no choice but to fight. Fighting is the ultimate last alternative. Every other means should be, just like you see Trump, he's trying to do everything to avoid a fight with Kim Jong-un, with the Iranians, although he's pushing hard against the Iranians, but actually they don't want to fight. The United States does not want to fight. It does not want to have a war. The wars are costly. They're destructive. Many people die unnecessarily. Previously, the leaders of the nation would fight, and whichever one was defeated would accept to pay taxes to the other one. They didn't always fight with armies. They would have the leaders of the nation fighting. Right? The leaders of the nation were Kshatriyas. So that would spare everybody else from getting killed. But when someone is like Duryodhana, he was basically a coward in some way. Therefore, he precipitated this war because of his refusal to negotiate, even with Krishna. Okay, and therefore it says, therefore Arjuna, while fighting on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, was not really fighting at all. He was simply carrying out the orders of Krishna in full Krishna consciousness. Such a person is never entangled in the reactions of works. So, how does this translate today? Well, if we have a bona fide spiritual master who represents the parampara and Krishna correctly, then we should always ask advice before embarking on a certain path. Just like one time, this one family came to me and they said, Prabhuji, everyone's making by opening 7-Elevens. So we were thinking of opening a 7-Eleven also. What do you think? I said, I think it's a bad idea. He said, why? Everyone's making money doing it. All the Punjabis are making money in 7-Elevens. I said, that may be true, but you have to sell beef jerky, you have to sell beer, you have to sell sometimes other alcoholic beverages, and you have lottery tickets, and cigarettes. All of these things are simple. Sometimes you have magazines, with nude women in it and things like that in these stores, and it's not good for you to do it. They said, well, what should we do then? I said, I have a friend of mine. He's a Greek gentleman. He sells dairy products, and he makes those little packages of butter for hotels, right, and restaurants, And I said, it's a good business. You're only dealing with dairy products. There's no meat involved. There's no alcohol or anything like that. And he wants to sell his business. Why don't you buy his business? They said, okay, we'll think about it. Give us his phone number, blah, blah, blah. But they had no intention of buying my friend's business, and he was not asking a lot of money for it. It was a turnkey business, right? They opened up the 7-Eleven. Not only the 7-Eleven. No, they opened up the Subway. It's even worse. And and I don't want to tell the rest of the story. It's too horrible. But see, that's the difference between a person who is going to be personally responsible for their mistakes, or a person who asks advice and takes it from a bona fide teacher. And the bona fide teacher is not going to say things like, yes, you can have an abortion, and yes, you can open up, you can sell chicken curry along with the veg food. They're not going to give that advice. So if you follow the advice, then like Arjuna, even though he was killing people, he killed a lot of people in the battle of Kurukshetra, such a person is never entangled in the reactions of work, because he was strictly following the instructions of Krishna, and he wasn't doing it for any self-aggrandizement or self-benefit. In fact, he didn't want to fight. But Krishna insisted, and he convinced Arjuna. So the other important point is one is pure in consciousness due to controlled senses, including the mind. And when you act like that, everyone is satisfied by his service. Therefore, it's necessary to control the mind and senses in order to have pure consciousness, and in order to work in such a way that people are actually pleased in the end and not dissatisfied. Okay. So, the Bhagavad Gita also gives the same solution of serving the Lord by the fruits of one's labor. Just like downstairs we put that motto, right? One should work very hard and offer the fruits of one's work to Krishna. This should be the motto of life. Right? It's downstairs, right? You put it there, right? Oh, somebody else put it there, yeah. I told someone, I forget who it is now. Huh? Ramakun, yeah. So, this path of nice karma, or liberation. So, in the 6th chapter, 47th verse, in the purport, Prabhupada explains what nice karma is. It's not N-I-C-E, but N-A-I-S-K-A-R-M-Y-A. But it sounds like nice, you know. So, there's a verse that explains, Bhakti means devotional service to the Lord, which is free from desire for material profit, either in this life or in the next. Devoid of such inclinations, one should fully absorb the mind in the Supreme. That is the purpose of nice karma. So, free from the desire for material profit. Well, businessmen say, wait a minute, then why should I do business? I have to work so hard. I can't make any profit. Well, wait a minute. There's two types of profit. There's the profit by which you get more entangled in the material world, and there's the profit by which you become more liberated in the material world. So, profit means what's beyond your minimum needs. Right? Let's say you buy a product for 50 cents and you sell it for 75 cents. So you made 25 cents profit. If you use half of that profit for Krishna, then you only have 12.5 cents profit. Now, can you live on the 12.5 cents profit? Answer is yes, but only if you limit your material opulence. You have to make a choice. So, people used to live, sometimes entire families lived in a 1 or 2 rooms, not 1 or 2 bedrooms, 1 or 2 rooms, right? Did you grow up like that? Yes? How many square feet was your dwelling? A lot of people. Yeah. Huh? Yeah. Yeah. So, you see, it's not that, people had these gigantic houses with 4 people living in it or something like that. I mean, most people in history have lived in very small dwellings, raised big families, even though the dwelling was small. And they were happy. I mean, in Calcutta, I was seeing whole families living in a big pipe in the street, cooking, a little chula in the sidewalk, taking a bath from the fire extinguisher, not extinguisher, the fire hydrant, right? They had the tool to turn it on, and they were taking baths right there in the street. And the little kids were raised, and the little kids are playing on the sidewalk in the street. And they cook on the chula every day. The mother is cooking there, making rotis and making some sabji, and kids are sitting down on the sidewalk eating. Don't think it doesn't happen. It's going on now. Most people in the world live in very small dwellings, and they still raise their families. Now, I'm not saying you should live in a cardboard box under the I-5, but if we limit our economic development to an appropriate level, then there's plenty of let's say, assets that we can use in Krishna's service. If we keep increasing our level of life, then there's less and less for Krishna, and it just means you get more and more entangled. So this nice karma is serving the Lord by the fruits of one's labor. That's called Naiskarmya. And that's on the path of liberation. So it's free from the desire for material profit. Now, all the socialists and communists, they say, "Whoa, and that's our philosophy: free from the desire for material profit. No profit. We're going to charge 90% tax on companies, and 80% on people." That's what AOC wants to do with Bernie Sanders and so forth, and Kamala Harris, and all these people. That's not Krishna conscious. It sounds like it is, but no, it's not Krishna conscious, because they want to take that money and spend it in ways that are not Krishna conscious. So their purpose is not to please Krishna. The Vedic principle of taxation was very simple. You would give 10% of your profit to the king. Now, it's very simple to calculate, right? And there was no reason to cheat, because it was reasonable. Let's say you made $100,000 a year, and after all your expenses, there's $30,000 left, so you would give $3,000 to the government, to the king, right? If you made nothing, if you could prove that you made nothing without cheating, then you didn't pay any taxes. But if you made something, you had to pay 10%. It's a very simple taxation system. And people gladly paid, because the king would always protect them, right? He wouldn't let nonsensical things into the kingdom, like, pornography and this thing and that thing. They were outlawed. Alcohol, meat eating, all those things, under especially Maharaj Parikshit, they were outlawed. Right? Okay, so now Krishna also explains that Bhaktya Tvananyaya Sakya Ahamevam Vidurijana Gyatam Jastam Chatatvena Pravistam Cha Parantapa. My dear Arjuna, only by undivided devotional service can I be understood as I am standing before you, and can thus be seen directly. Only in this way can you enter into the mysteries of my understanding. So this is 11th chapter, 54th verse. So, by undivided, is there any advantage to living a pure Krishna conscious life? Yes, here it is. Krishna is guaranteeing that you'll be able to see him directly and enter into the mysteries of his understanding. Krishna can be understood only by the process of undivided devotional service. He explicitly explains this in this verse so that unauthorized commentators who try to understand Bhagavad Gita by the speculative process will know that they are simply wasting their time. No one can understand Krishna or how he came from parents in a four-handed form and at once changed himself into a two-handed form. These things are very difficult to understand by study of the Vedas. People think, "Oh, this is just mythology. It's not, it didn't really happen like this. These are, flights of poetic excess or exuberance. It's not real. How can that be real? 4 arms and 2 arms." These things are very difficult to understand by study of the Vedas or by philosophical speculation. Therefore, it is clearly stated here that no one can see him or enter into understanding of these matters. Those who, however, are very experienced students of Vedic literature can learn about him from the Vedic literature in so many ways. There are so many rules and regulations, and if one at all wants to understand Krishna, he must follow the regulative principles described in the authoritative literature. One can perform penance in accordance with these principles. For example, to undergo serious penances, one may observe fasting on Janmashtami, the day on which Krishna appeared, and on the 2 days of Ekadasi, the 11th day after the new moon and the 11th day after the full moon. As far as charity is concerned, it is plain that charity should be given to the devotees of Krishna who are engaged in his devotional service to spread the Krishna philosophy or Krishna consciousness throughout the world. Krishna consciousness is a benediction to humanity. Lord Chaitanya was appreciated by Rupa Goswami as the most munificent man of charity because love of Krishna, which is very difficult to achieve, was distributed freely by him. So if one gives some amount of his money to persons involved in distributing Krishna consciousness, that charity given to spread Krishna consciousness is the greatest charity in the world. And if one worships as prescribed in the temples in India there's always some statue, usually of Vishnu or Krishna. That is a chance to progress by offering worship and respect to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For the beginners in devotional service to the Lord, temple worship is essential, and this is confirmed in the Vedic literature. One who has unflinching devotion for the Supreme Lord and is directed by the spiritual master, in whom he has similar unflinching faith, can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead by revelation. One cannot understand Krishna by mental speculation. For one who does not take personal training under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, it is impossible to even begin to understand Krishna. The word tu in this verse is especially used here to indicate that no other process can be used, can be recommended, or can be successful in understanding Krishna. The personal forms of Krishna, the two-handed form and the four-handed, are described as sudur darshan. Very difficult to see. They are completely different from the temporary universal forms shown to Arjuna. The four-handed form of Narayana and the two-handed form of Krishna are eternal and transcendental, whereas the universal form exhibited to Arjuna is temporary. The word tvad anyena nadrishta purvam in verse 47 state that before Arjuna no one had seen that universal form. This is from the 11th chapter. Also, they suggest that amongst the devotees there was no necessity of showing it. That form was exhibited by Krishna at the request of Arjuna, so that in the future, when one represents himself as an incarnation of God, people can ask to see his universal form. The word na, used repeatedly in the previous verse, indicates that one should not be very much proud of such credentials as academic education in Vedic literature. In other words, studying the Vedas in a university, so-called university of knowledge. One must take to the devotional service of Krishna. Only then can one attempt to write commentaries on Bhagavad Gita. Krishna changes from the universal form to the four-handed form of Narayana, and then to his own natural form of two hands. This indicates that the four-handed forms and other forms mentioned in the Vedic literature are all emanations of the original two-handed Krishna. He is the origin of all emanations. Krishna is distinct even from these forms, what to speak of the impersonal conception. So this defeats the Sri Vaishnava's contention that Krishna is an incarnation of Lord Vishnu or Narayana. As far as the four-handed forms of Krishna are concerned, it is stated clearly that even the most identical four-handed form of Krishna, which is known as Mahavishnu, who is lying on the cosmic ocean and whose breathing so many innumerable universes are passing out and entering, and from whose breathing so many innumerable universes are passing out and entering, is also an expansion of the Supreme Lord, as stated in Brahma Samhita 548. Yasyaika nisvasita kala matavalam ya jivanti loma vilaja naga jagadandanata Vishnu mahansa yasya kalabhisesu govindamadi purisham tamaham bhajami. The Mahavishnu, into whom all the innumerable universes enter and from whom they come forth again simply by his breathing process, is a plenary expansion of Krishna. Therefore, I worship Govinda, Krishna, the cause of all causes. So this is Brahma. Now, who can be a greater authority than Lord Brahma, the first created living being, who was personally instructed by Krishna in how to perform the creation and the who's who of the spiritual and material world. Therefore, one should conclusively worship the personal form of Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has eternal bliss and knowledge. He is the source of all forms of Vishnu, he is the source of all forms of incarnation, and he is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. In the Vedic literature, Gopala Tapani Upanishad 1.1, the following statement appears. Satchidananda Rupaya Krishnaya Yakrista Karine Namo Vedanta Vedaya Gurave Buddhi Sakshine. I offer my respectful obeisance unto Krishna, who has a transcendental form of bliss, eternity, and knowledge. I offer my respect to him, because understanding him means understanding the Vedas, and he is therefore the supreme spiritual master. Then it is said, Krishno vai paramam daivatam. Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. Gopala Tapana Upanishad 1.3. Eko vasi sarvaga Krishna idya. That one Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, and he is worshipable. Eko pi san bahuda yo vabhati. Krishna is one, but he is manifested in unlimited forms and expanded incarnations. Gopala Tapani Upanishad 1.21. So Upanishads are the supreme authority in Vedic knowledge. And here the Gopala Tapani Upanishad is clearly saying that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. There's no equivocation. Then Brahma Samhita, Brahma says, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is Krishna, who has a body of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. He has no beginning, for he is the beginning of everything. He is the cause of all causes. Elsewhere it is said, Yatra Tirnam Krishnakyam Param Brahma Narakriti. The Supreme Absolute Truth is a person. His name is Krishna, and he sometimes descends on the earth. Similarly, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we find a description of all kinds of incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and in this list, the name of Krishna also appears. But then it is said that this Krishna is not an incarnation of God, but is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Ete chamsa kalakpumsa Krishna stu Bhagavan Swayam. Similarly, in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Matak parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya. There's nothing superior to my form as the personality of Godhead. He also says elsewhere in Bhagavad Gita, Aham adir hi devanam. I am the origin of all demigods. And after understanding Bhagavad Gita from Krishna, Arjuna also confirms this in the following words, Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram Paramam Bhavam. I now fully understand that you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, and that you are the refuge of everything. Therefore, the universal form which Krishna showed to Arjuna is not the original form of God. The original is the Krishna form. The universal form with its thousands and thousands of heads and hands is manifest just to draw the attention of those who have no love for God. It is not God's original form. So one time Prabhupada was speaking with the ambassador of India to England, and this man revealed, by the way he was talking, that he did not think that Krishna is the origin of everything. And at one point Prabhupada said to him that you are not really interested in Krishna. You're just paying lip service. You're interested in Brahman, the unmanifest, impersonal realization. He said, no, I believe in Krishna. He said, no, you don't believe in Krishna. If you did, then you would be listening more carefully to what I'm saying. You avoid the name of Krishna. He just said Krishna at that point, right? Because Prabhupada said, you're not interested in Krishna. He said, you avoid, as like the plague, the name of Krishna. And you're always talking about it, or Brahman, or the Absolute, or the Supreme. So, here it says, therefore the universal form which Krishna showed to Arjuna is not the original form of God. The original is the Krishna form. The universal form is not attractive for pure devotees who are in love with the Lord in different transcendental relationships. The Supreme Godhead exchanges transcendental love in his original form of Krishna. Therefore, to Arjuna, who was so intimately related with Krishna in friendship, this form of the universal manifestation was not pleasing. Rather, it was fearful. Arjuna, who was a constant companion of Krishna's, must have had transcendental eyes. He was not an ordinary man. Therefore, he was not captivated by the universal form. This form may seem wonderful to persons who are involved in elevating themselves by fruitive activities, but to persons who are engaged in devotional service, the two-handed form of Krishna is the most dear. So, here we see a lot of interesting points. And this is all, you see how detailed the Bhagavad Gita is about liberated, completely pure Krishna conscious, liberated action. And that's why I said, Pure devotional service is only explained in the Narada Pancharatra, Bhagavad Gita, and Srimad Bhagavatam. It's not explained in any other Vedic scripture in such a clear, straightforward way. You know. So then we'll do one more verse and we'll stop. 139. In the fourth incarnation, the Lord became Nara and Narayana, the twin sons of the wife of King Dharma. Thus he undertook severe and exemplary penances to control the senses. And then Prabhupada writes, as King Rishabha advised his sons, tapasya, or voluntary acceptance of penance, for realization of the transcendence, is the only duty of the human being. It was so done by the Lord himself in an exemplary manner to teach us. So without engaging in tapasya, or voluntary acts of self-abnegation, or let's say, denial of sense gratification, this is actually the duty of life, to undergo self-denial of sense gratification in order to use those senses, including the mind and the intelligence, in the service of Krishna. And Prabhupada says, this is the only duty of the human being. And it was so done by the Lord himself in an exemplary manner to teach us. So when he appeared as Nara and Narayana, he, just like the four Kumaras, also engaged in exemplary, let's call it self-denial, not self-denial, but denial of sense gratification. The Lord is very kind to the forgetful souls. He therefore comes himself and leaves behind necessary instructions, and also sends his good sons as representatives to call all the conditioned souls back to Godhead. Recently, within the memory of everyone, Lord Chaitanya also appeared for the same purpose, to show special favor to fallen souls of this age of iron industry. The incarnation of Narayana is worshipped still at Badri Narayana on the range of the Himalayas. So here we have covered 4 incarnations of the Lord. There's a lot more that has to be said, a lot more incarnations that we have to cover. It's getting a little late, so we'll stop right there and continue. Actually, because last week we also had very little instruction. Today I was late. I'm sorry about that. There's so many things going on. We have the Rath Yatra parade and so many things, and then Ananda Mela is coming up. So I have a suggestion. And since I'm here every morning and we have Srimad Bhagavatam class, but I could give 2 classes, like one tomorrow is Friday, or starting Monday, one Monday, maybe one Wednesday, in the morning, from at 6:15 to 7:30, so we can catch up. Otherwise, we're going to fall behind. I don't know if everyone's willing to come that early, but the sun is up, and if you take rest early, you'll be able to come, and we can at least finish next week all the incarnations of the Lord and come to chapter 4. So if you want to do that, let me know, and we could do it, let's say, Monday and Wednesday next week. So you can get yourself ready, sleeping early, waking up early. Is that an idea? Or we do it Tuesday, Wednesday. Sometimes Monday's a little hard for some people. Let me know, and we can do that so that we can catch up. Okay. What? Tuesday and Wednesday. Okay. Anybody else have a suggestion? Okay. Hari Bol. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yes. Well, Mayavadis, by their own, let's say, offensive limitation, will never reach the goal. even if they become Brahman realization, they're going to fall down because they think there's nothing beyond it. So if you go out to space and you miss the planet you were aiming for, what happens to you? You just keep going out into space until you die, right? So Mayavadis don't believe there's any planets to go to in the Brahman effulgence. They believe that it's the effulgence itself that's the ultimate goal. So they will all fall down. The bona fide impersonalists have a chance to progress from Brahman realization to Paramatma to Bhagavan realization, like the Kumaras. Well, it's used for all of them, but the bona fide impersonalist can eventually, because if you look at the previous verse, it says even the impersonalist can reach the ultimate goal, but after a very long time. It says, verse number 2, those who fix their minds on my personal... Oh, no, let's see. Wait a minute, I missed this verse. Wait a minute. Yeah, but those who fully worship the unmanifested. This is verse 3 and 4, chapter 12. That which lies beyond the perception of senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed and immovable, the impersonal conception of the absolute truth, by controlling the various senses and being equally disposed to everyone, such persons, engaged in the welfare of all, at last achieve me. So that means a bona fide impersonalist, it's possible. Mayavadi, it's impossible, because they say there's nothing beyond Brahman. Okay? That should answer your question, right? Yeah. Yes. You can't do it without the help of a bona fide guru. Right? So you have Arjuna with Krishna. Krishna is the original guru. You have Sarvabhauma with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and so forth. You know, you have the Mayavadis in Kashi. Also, Lord Chaitanya preached to them. They became somewhat more friendly and devoted to the Lord. You know. So you have to have the help of a bona fide guru in a bona fide disciplic succession. Okay, so... The penance is devotional practices, following the regulative principles, attending the programs morning and evening, serving the deity, taking only prasadam, and engaged in sankirtan and preaching. That's called penance and austerity. So austerity means you deny yourself sense gratification. Only engage in acts of service. And penance means you're making up for all previous sins by strictly adhering to the path of disciplined devotional service. So it's you're making up, you're eliminating all your sinful activities from the past. Okay? Haribol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Next week I'm traveling for business.
Okay.
I have a conference in Las Vegas. So I will attend your lecture online.
Yeah, sure. No problem. Well, if we do it in the morning, we have to get Ananda Ram to come early too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a place to stay in the temple.
Oh, nice.
So,
Yeah, that's a nice place. It's a new temple.
I heard that it's just 2 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, good. Yeah. I'm glad to hear that. You're not staying in a casino.
The conference had that hotel. When you come back? Friday, Thursday.